The hallway was too quiet for a war zone. Steel walls dripped with red light from the emergency beacons overhead. Underneath the flicker, the bodies of alien soldiers lay scattered, some groaning, most not moving. In the middle of it all stood a lone human in black armor, steam rising from his shoulders. His name was Cade, and his presence meant death. He didn't run. He walked slowly, each step calm and controlled. His rifle hummed with heat, plasma coils still cooling from the last shot. Behind him, the trail of destruction stretched back to the landing pad. Ahead, only one locked door remained. His orders were simple: eliminate the target, leave no survivors. Cade wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a diplomat. He was a shadow sent by Earth's covert command. When words failed and bombs were too loud, Cade arrived. No one had expected the alien leadership to fall so easily. But this target was different. This one had a name that made even the quietest intel agents lower their voice. Commander Zivana. She was said to be ruthless. The mind behind the last 3 attacks on human colonies. A genius strategist, and more dangerous, a figure the alien troops would die for. If she escaped, the war would stretch into years. If she died, peace might follow. That was the gamble Earth was willing to make. That was why Cade had come alone. He reached the reinforced door. His glove tapped the hacking sequence. Sparks flew. The door slid open halfway, then jammed. Cade slid in sideways, pistol raised. His boots made no sound on the polished floor. The room inside wasn't a command center. It looked more like a sanctuary. Statues lined the walls. Blue light pulsed from the floor. And in the center stood her. Zivana was not what he expected. She was young, too young for someone with so much blood on her hands. Her skin was smooth and shimmered with a silver blue tone. Her long hair flowed like liquid silk, glowing under the lights. She wore ceremonial armor, less for war, more for royalty. Her hands were raised. She was unarmed. Her eyes didn't blink. She stared at him without fear. Cade aimed. His finger tightened, then stopped. Something in her expression wasn't defiance, it was sorrow. Not fear of death, but something deeper. She took a step forward, and for the first time in years, Cade felt hesitation. "You killed them all," she said softly. Her voice didn't tremble. "But I knew you'd come. I called you here myself." Cade frowned. No one knew who had leaked the base's location. His mission had been too clean. No traps. No ambushes. Everything had felt too easy. He thought it was luck. Now he wondered if it was design. "You want to die?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "No, I want a deal." He should have pulled the trigger. Protocol demanded it. His comms were silent. No command override. No backup. Just him and her. But the moment dragged, and in her calm, he saw something rare. She wasn't broken. She wasn't begging. She was playing a final move on a board he didn't even see. "What kind of deal?" he asked coldly. Zivana lowered her hands but didn't move. "Kill me, and the war resets. Another will rise, maybe worse. But help me escape, and I'll give you something no other commander can: an end, a real end." "You think I'd trust you? I think you've lost enough to want it over." He hated that she was right. Faces he forgot screamed behind his eyes. Friends lost in missions that earned him no peace. He wasn't a hero, he was a weapon, but weapons wear down. Even blades rust. Cade didn't lower his pistol, but his hand stopped shaking. The silence stretched again, not from fear, but choice. She had just offered him something more dangerous than war: hope, and that was how it started. Cade had never walked away from a target before. Every mission ended with silence, blood, and dust. But now, as he stood beside Zivana in a dim corridor beneath the palace, he felt something shifting inside him. The pistol at his hip felt heavier than usual. His orders had been clear, but her words still echoed in his mind like a question. waiting to be answered. She moved with grace even in chains. He had cuffed her hands but left her feet free. She didn't try to run. She didn't speak unless he asked something. There was no begging, no attempts at escape. It felt more like she was guiding him than being led. And that alone disturbed him. More than any weapon could. "Where are we going?" he asked in a low voice. Zivana turned her head slightly, just enough for him to hear her answer. "There's a chamber below. My people built it to store what they feared most. It's where I'll show you the truth. And give you what you came for." Cade didn't respond. He didn't like riddles. Truth didn't end wars. Bullets did. But there was a part of him small and buried that wanted to know what she meant. Why had she surrendered so easily if she held something worth protecting? They passed another checkpoint. The guards were already dead, not by his hand. Zivana looked down at them with no emotion. Her kind didn't cry over fallen soldiers. They were raised to honor the cause, not the cost. That made her calmness even more strange. She was no prisoner. She was a player. When they reached the sealed vault, Zivana paused. "Help me open it," she said. Cade hesitated. "You open it." She nodded and placed her palm on the scanner. A deep hum rumbled through the stone walls. Lights pulsed in patterns older than the war itself. Then the door cracked open. Cold air flowed out, and the chamber revealed itself glowing blue, layered in alien carvings, and at its center something pulsed. Cade stepped inside slowly. His pistol remained drawn. He scanned every corner, every shadow. No threats, no traps. Just the hum of ancient energy and the strange heartbeat of the object in the center. It looked like a crystal but breathed like something alive. He turned. To her, his voice low. "What is it?" Zivana's eyes softened. "The last piece of our legacy. It holds memories, not data. Not maps, but living history, yours and mine. Watch it, and you'll see why I brought you here. I don't have time for alien stories. You don't have time for another war either." That struck him harder than he expected. He walked to the crystal. As he stepped closer, the glow shifted. Images flickered inside the surface. Battles. Screams. Children hiding beneath collapsed towers. He saw humans, he saw her people, he saw no difference. Just pain. The vision changed. He saw a younger Zivana. Not a commander. Just a girl. Hiding, crying, then growing, training, bleeding, until she became what he knew. And then he saw himself. Not from his own eyes, but through others. He saw what they feared in him. Not a man, a shadow. A death sentence in armor. He stepped back, chest tight. The glow faded. The vault dimmed again. Zivana stood still watching him. "You see now," she whispered. "I didn't call you here to die. I called you to decide." "What decision? Will you kill a ghost, or help bury it?" Cade didn't answer right away. The silence stretched between them. His mission had ended the moment he let her live. Everything after this was his choice alone. No orders, no rules. Just one path. Or another. And for the first time, he didn't know which one to take. He looked at her, really looked. She wasn't broken. She wasn't evil. She was tired, like him. A weapon used too long and discarded too late. The war had made them both into monsters. But maybe monsters could choose something different when the killing stopped. His hand slowly lowered the pistol. Zivana watched as Cade's hand dropped the weapon. There was no smile on her face, no victory in her eyes. Only a quiet understanding, like she had been waiting for this exact moment. The pistol remained holstered, and in that act, everything shifted between them. The silence of the vault returned. The air was heavy, not with danger, but with decision. Cade had crossed a line that assassins were never trained to cross. Mercy. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't part of the plan. It was something more human than he wanted to admit. Zivana turned toward a small terminal near the crystal. Her fingers glided across the controls. Symbols and maps appeared in the air. They showed fleets, hidden tunnels, refugee camps. Cade narrowed his eyes. What am I looking at? She didn't hesitate. The future. If we act now, we can dismantle both war machines from the inside. No more strikes. No more bombs. Just an end. You think Earth will listen to you? No, but they might listen to you. Cade stepped closer. The data was overwhelming. Locations he had attacked before were on that map, but this time marked as shelters. He felt a sting in his chest. Maybe the enemy wasn't always where they said it was. Maybe someone had lied to him more than once. Why should I believe any of this? Zivana's voice lowered. Because I'm giving you my life with it. If you choose to kill me now, the data dies too. No one will ever know. But if you protect me, I'll share everything. It wasn't a bargain made from fear. She wasn't trying to survive. She was trying to end something larger than herself. That made it even harder for Cade to walk away. He looked down at the dead guards outside the vault. Each one had followed orders. Each one had fallen for it. He sighed and nodded. We get out. We go quiet. No comes. No signals. Zivana nodded. Agreed. I know a route beneath the city. They moved fast. Not like enemies. Not like allies. Something in between. Cade walked behind her, watching every step, every twitch. But she didn't run. She didn't lie. The tunnels were real. Dusty, narrow, and full of old tech. Places forgotten. By both sides of the war. As they walked, she spoke again. Do you know who built these tunnels? No, your people. He stopped. What? Decades ago. When humans and Zalari worked together, before the fear started. Before the ambassadors were assassinated. These tunnels were part of a peace plan. He didn't remember peace. He had only seen burning skies and broken treaties. His life had been filled with shadows, blood, and silence. But now, in these forgotten halls, he felt something unfamiliar pressing on his thoughts. What if someone started the war on purpose? She asked quietly. Cade didn't answer. The question hurt. It opened doors in his mind he didn't want to open. If everything he had done was based on a lie, then what was left of him? They reached the surface exit. A rusted ladder led up into the night. Cade climbed first, scanning the area. The forest was quiet. A soft wind brushed the treetops. No drones, no patrols. Just starlight and soil. Zivana followed slowly, her movements still careful. They walked deeper into the woods, far from cities, far from noise. Cade checked his tracker and smashed it against a rock. We vanish now, he said. You're sure? Yes. This war ends on our terms or not at all. Zivana looked up at the stars. Then we start tomorrow. He looked at her again. She was still dangerous, still alien. But she wasn't his enemy anymore. Maybe never had been. He didn't know what came next. He only knew it had to be different, and so they disappeared. Into the trees, the forest stretched wide around them, thick with twisted roots and fog that rolled low across the mossy ground. Cade moved first, his eyes sweeping side to side, while Zivana stayed close behind. The silence between them was no longer tense but cautious. They had escaped the palace, but not the war. Cade knew it wouldn't take long before someone noticed her missing. There were no signs of drones yet, but he assumed the sky would soon be crawling with scanners. Every second counted. Every breath they took was borrowed time. Zivana said nothing for a long while. Her feet made no sound on the soft dirt. Her gaze kept shifting to the stars, as if searching for something familiar. Cade noticed she walked like a soldier, but looked like she carried the weight of a planet on her back. You okay? He asked without stopping. She nodded slowly. I didn't think we'd get this far. I expected you to kill me when we met. You're not making it easy. Good. The path curved into a ravine. A collapsed transport ship rusted there, its sides torn open by time. Cade led her through the wreckage and into the hidden shelter. Beneath it, inside was a tight space barely big enough for two people to sit. It was dark, but safe from the sky. He dropped his bag and began checking his gear. His weapons were still loaded. Power cells at full charge. He offered her a ration bar. She took it without a word and began to eat. It was the first time she looked like someone just trying to survive. Cade leaned against the wall. "So you gonna tell me how you knew I was coming?" Zavanna wiped her mouth, then stared straight ahead. "There's someone on your side who wants the war to end. A deep contact. They leaked your mission route to me." He frowned. "A human?" "Yes, one of your own. Said you were the only one who might listen." That shook him more than he expected. He had worked alone for years, trusted no one. He thought he was the blade of Earth's justice. Now he wasn't sure if he was being used again. "Do you trust this contact?" he asked. Zavanna nodded. "With everything. They've saved more lives in the shadows than most leaders ever could in daylight." Cade crossed his arms. "Why me? You're dangerous. But you have control." "That's rare," he didn't reply. The words landed deep. He had been called many things: killer, ghost, shadow, but never controlled. And never chosen. They rested until dawn. The sky turned violet above the treetops. Birds began to stir. Distant. Engines echoed far off. Someone was searching. Cade stood and checked outside. Nothing closed yet. But time was closing in. "We have to move again," he said firmly. Zavanna stood without question. Her armor clinked softly as she followed him back into the forest. The air smelled of wet leaves and iron. Each step deeper into the woods was a step further from everything they had known. After an hour, they reached a hilltop that overlooked a valley filled with satellite dishes and signal towers. Zavanna pointed. "That's where we send the data. Once Earth sees what I gave you, it all changes." Cade narrowed his eyes. "And what if they don't care? Then we disappear, together." He looked at her. "You mean go rogue?" "I mean we make our own peace." The idea sounded impossible. Maybe even stupid, but it also sounded honest. After everything, Cade found himself believing in her more than any general he'd ever served. Maybe she wasn't his mission anymore. Maybe she was the future. They started down the hill in silence. They moved down the hill with care, keeping low between the tall grass and rocky outcrops. The air was crisp, but danger still clung to the wind. Below, the signal base stood silent, its blinking lights waiting like eyes in the dark. Cade scanned the perimeter, counting cameras and motion detectors before speaking. "There are only 2 guards on the front gate," he said. "But that doesn't mean we're alone." Zavanna crouched beside him, her eyes focused. "There's a maintenance tunnel, north side, hidden by vines. If we slip in through there, we won't trigger any alerts." Cade nodded. He trusted her now, but only as far as the mission allowed. Her voice had never wavered, not even under pressure. She wasn't just a leader, she was trained. He couldn't forget that. They circled the outer fence and found the vines. Thick and knotted, they hit a rusted panel half buried in the ground. Cade pried it open with a blade, and a hiss of stale air greeted them from below. Zavanna climbed in first, followed by Cade, who sealed the hatch behind them. The tunnel was narrow and dark, only lit by flickering emergency lights. Dust danced in the air. Pipes lined the ceiling. The silence was broken only by their soft footsteps. After 10 minutes, they reached a hatch that led up into the main tower. Cade placed his ear to the metal, then tapped twice. "No movement," he whispered. Zavanna climbed up, twisted the lock, and opened it into a storage room. The air inside was cold and sterile. Shelves of unused equipment lined the walls. They stepped out quietly, weapons ready, eyes sharp. Cade led the way, his footsteps nearly silent on the steel floor. The command center was 1 floor up. They found the stairs and moved quickly. Cade neutralized a patrolling drone with one shot from his silenced pistol. Zivana disabled a motion turret using codes only she knew. Together, they reached the door of the command room without alerting anyone. Cade entered first. The two technicians inside barely had time to react. He pointed his pistol and motioned for silence. "Out," he ordered. They ran without question. Zivana sat at the terminal and began uploading the data crystal. The screen lit up with blue symbols. The files began transferring. Outside the tower, alarms suddenly blared. Motion sensors had picked up a patrol returning early. Zivana's fingers danced over the keys. "They're locking the signal. I need another 30 seconds. Cade moved to the window. 4 armed guards approached the door. He fired 3 quick shots and dropped 2 instantly. The other 2 took cover. The tower shook with return fire. Sparks flew from the walls. Zivana ducked and yelled over the noise. "Upload complete. Transmitting to Earth Command." "Then we leave," Cade shouted. They ran down the stairs as the enemy breached the entrance. Gunfire echoed through the halls. Cade dropped 2. More soldiers. Zivana fired a pulse round that overloaded the lights. Darkness fell. They slipped back into the tunnel while the rest of the base exploded into confusion. Once inside the escape path, Cade sealed the hatch again. He wiped sweat from his face and looked at her. "You sure they got the data?" "They got it. And if they ignore it, we'll know where everyone truly stands." They emerged back into the forest just before sunrise. The horizon glowed with pale light. Birds sang cautiously, unsure if the morning meant safety or more death. Cad stared toward the sky, expecting drones. But none came. They walked together through the trees until they reached a hidden bunker Zivana had used in the past. Inside were supplies, communication blockers, and warmth. It wasn't home, but it was shelter. Cade collapsed onto a crate and stared at the ground for a long time. Zivana sat across from him, silent. Then she whispered, "Do you regret sparing me?" "No," he answered after a pause. "But I'm not sure who that makes me now." "Maybe that's the point." He looked at her again. For the first time she looked tired, not weak. Just tired of being strong for too long. It made her real in a way he hadn't seen before. And in that quiet space between war and peace, something unfamiliar began to grow. The bunker was buried beneath roots and rock, invisible to aerial scans and heat sensors. Inside, the air was still and dry. Cade sat at the small metal table, eyes focused on the portable screen in front of him. The message from Earth Command blinked slowly in encrypted red. Zivana stood beside him, watching without speaking. She hadn't asked for anything since the upload. She had given everything she had: data, access, and trust. Now they waited to see if the humans would do the same. Cade decrypted the message. It was short and cold. Data received, under review. Await further contact. He didn't react. He just stared at the screen until the light faded and the words vanished. It wasn't a yes. It wasn't a no. Just silence wearing a mask. Zivana placed a hand on the table. That's how it starts. Denial, then hesitation, then doubt. They'll fight themselves before they ever fight the truth. Cade looked up at her. "You've done this before?" "No, but I've lived it." He stood and walked to the narrow window. Outside, the forest stretched for miles. Somewhere beyond the trees, soldiers were still moving. Ships were still flying. Politicians were still making speeches. And no one knew 2 fugitives had just handed them a way out of a never-ending war. "Do you think they'll try to erase us?" he asked. Zivana leaned against the wall. "Not if they're smart. But power doesn't enjoy being challenged. They trained me to erase threats. And now you're the one they fear." The room fell quiet again. Cade removed his chest armor and set it aside. His body was scarred, marked by blades and burns. But it was the tiredness in his eyes that told the real story. He wasn't built for peace. He wasn't taught to wait. Zivanna approached slowly. You still carry weight, not just gear, guilt. He didn't deny it. I killed because I was told to, but I never asked who gave the orders, or why. That's how they keep men like you sharp, obedient, dead inside. He sat back down and stared at his gloves. They were worn at the edges. The leather had molded to his fingers. Tools of a killer. Symbols of a past he now questioned. Zivanna poured water into 2 small metal cups and handed him one. He took it without a word. They drank slowly. Nothing about their silence felt empty. It was full of unspoken thoughts and shared exhaustion. Night came fast. Cade sat by the low lamp, listening to the soft hum of the bunker's systems. Zivanna lay on the small cot, resting. Her face was turned away, her breathing calm. For a moment, he imagined they weren't fugitives. That may be somewhere. They could be something else. He shook the thought from his head. There was no time for dreams. Tomorrow could bring hunters, betrayal, or both. But tonight was still theirs. A pause between storms. A breath inside chaos. At midnight, a soft beep echoed from the terminal. Cade jumped to his feet. Zivanna woke instantly. The screen flickered, displaying a new message. Prepare for contact. Priority extraction inbound. Hostile elements compromised. Stay secure. Cade read it twice. Someone on the inside is moving fast. Zivanna nodded. Then the truth reached someone willing to bleed for it. They began packing their supplies. Every movement was swift, efficient. No words were wasted. The sun would rise soon. And with it, the next phase of their lives. They didn't know who would greet them at the rendezvous. Friend or executioner. As the first light crept through the trees, they left the bunker and headed toward the marked coordinates. A clearing waited ahead, surrounded by thick growth. Cade scanned the sky. A faint hum vibrated in the distance. Then a ship appeared above the treetops. It hovered without markings. No flags, no colors, just purpose. The side hatch opened slowly. Inside stood a woman in human military gear, eyes sharp, voice steady. You're both coming with me. Orders. From the top. Cade hesitated, then stepped forward. Cade didn't speak as he stepped onto the ship. His eyes scanned every corner, noting the clean layout, the locked storage, and the soft hum of a stealth engine. It wasn't military issue. It was something more private, more dangerous. Zivanna followed him in, her steps slow but sure. The woman who greeted them didn't offer a name. She wore a patchless jacket and black gloves. Her face was calm, unreadable. She pressed a button, and the hatch sealed behind them. The ship lifted into the sky without a sound. No welcome. No comfort, just motion. Destination? Cade asked. Finally breaking the silence, the woman replied without looking at him. Deep facility. Neutral zone. Underground. Your presence has caused noise. Too many are listening. Zivanna crossed her arms. Then we gave them reason to. The woman didn't respond. She moved to the front and sat in the pilot's seat. The ship adjusted course mid-air. Cade felt the pressure shift, a sign they were leaving the regular atmosphere and heading into a restricted corridor. They sat in the back, strapped in by simple belts. The silence stretched. No one trusted anyone, but the mission had moved beyond personal doubt. Earth Command had responded. That meant something. For now, it meant survival. Zivanna looked at Cade. Her voice was low. If they try to split, US, don't let them. He nodded without hesitation. They'll have to go through me. She allowed herself a small breath. Maybe it was relief, maybe something else. But in that short moment, she wasn't a commander or a fugitive. She was just someone holding on to the only person who hadn't betrayed her. After an hour of flight, the ship began its descent. Through the viewport, Cade saw a rocky wasteland with no cities, no lights, no movement. Just craters and dust. The ship hovered over a disguised platform, which opened slowly to reveal a landing bay hidden beneath the surface. As they landed, the lights inside dimmed. The woman pilot stood and opened the hatch. "Follow me." No questions. They stepped into a cold corridor made of metal and stone. Armed guards flanked the walls. Their faces were hidden behind black visors. No one spoke. No one moved. The air felt like judgment, heavy, unforgiving. Every step echoed like a warning. At the end of the hall, a tall steel door opened with a hiss. Inside was a meeting chamber round cold, lined with screens and old faces. Earth Command didn't send generals. They sent shadows. Operatives, planners, people who controlled wars. Without touching the battlefield, one of them spoke. Cade 17, assassin rank, mission history confirmed. "You've broken command protocol." Cade didn't flinch. "Because command forgot why the war started." Another voice answered. "The alien beside you has killed thousands of our soldiers. Explain why she breathes." Zavanna stepped forward. "Because I gave you the key to end the war." And he chose peace over blood. The room fell silent. The screens flickered. Data began to play the files from the vault. Unfiltered footage. Conversations, secret orders. Proof of betrayals on both sides. Proof that some leaders wanted war to never end because it gave them power. The mood changed. The shadows no longer looked angry. They looked nervous. One leaned forward. "If this goes public, everything collapses." Cade stepped beside Zavanna. "Maybe that's what needs to happen." Someone else spoke from the back. "And what do you propose?" A human and an alien walking into the fire together, hand in hand, Zavanna answered. "No, we walk ahead of it. And we burn the lies behind us." They were led to a separate room while the council deliberated. Cad paced slowly. Zavanna sat calmly. Her eyes followed him. She had seen enough. Councils to know when power was afraid. And today, fear had taken root inside the heart of command. The door finally opened again. The same nameless woman stepped in. Decision made. "They won't speak it aloud, but you're free and protected, for now." Cade looked at Zavanna. She nodded once. The door behind them sealed with a soft hiss, and silence filled the chamber. Once again, Cade leaned against the wall, arms crossed, staring at nothing. Zavanna sat on the edge of the narrow bench, her hands resting on her knees. The council had released them, but not without warning. "You'll be watched," the woman had said. "If you break trust, we bury you where no one will find your bones." That was the deal. Not freedom, not forgiveness. Just permission to walk away while the powerful cleaned up the mess they had hidden for years. But it was more than Cade had expected. After all the blood and betrayal, they were still standing. Zavanna stood up and looked around the room. "We can't stay here. They might change their minds." "I know," Cade said. "I've already planned a route. Quiet, off-grid." She tilted her head. "And after that? Whatever we choose." They left the underground base without celebration or ceremony. No guards saluted them. No one gave thanks. But no one stopped them either. That was enough. They boarded a small, unmarked vessel and flew east into the rising sun. The world below them looked untouched, untamed, a place where war hadn't yet carved its signature. Into the dirt, they landed near a river far beyond city lines. Old trees shaded the ground. Birds called out across the open sky. It felt peaceful. It felt alien. But it was also the only place that felt honest after everything they had seen. Cade built a shelter using scraps from the ship. Zavanna helped him without needing direction. They didn't talk much during those hours. Words weren't necessary. Their actions spoke louder than plans or promises. Two enemies who had become something else. When night came, they sat by a small fire. The sky above was filled with stars. Some of those stars still held ships and weapons pointed at each other. But for once, the silence in their hearts was stronger than the noise of war. Zivanna broke the quiet. "Do you miss it?" Cade took a long breath. "I don't even know what it was. Orders? Purpose? Death? No, I don't miss it. I just don't know who I am without it." "You're the man who spared his target. That's who." He looked at her, firelight dancing across his face. "And you're the target who offered a better deal than death." She smiled, not wide, but real. The kind that didn't need to prove anything, just exist. Then she added, "I think we're both something new now." They stayed in that place for days. No one came. No one hunted them. Somewhere out there, the war was shifting. Leaders were forced to explain missing files. Soldiers began questioning old orders. And deep within the systems of Earth Command, the truth they had uncovered continued to spread. But Cade and Zivanna didn't return to fight. They had done enough. Their mission now was survival with purpose. Quiet purpose. They grew food. They built walls. They argued. They laughed. They shared stories. Slowly, the assassin and the commander faded, and something human remained. One morning, Cade found Zivanna by the river, her feet in the cold water. She turned as he approached, eyes calm, voice soft. "I think they'll come one day." He didn't ask who. He already knew. Let them. "We'll be ready." She stood and walked toward him, her hand brushing his. A simple touch. Not a claim, just connection. In that moment, no one ruled, no one served. They just existed. Together, they faced the trees, the sun rising behind them. Whatever came next, they would meet it not as enemies or fugitives, but as something stronger, survivors, partners, a new answer to an old war. And finally, the blade put itself to rest.